From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Hope you had a good weekend. It's, of course, Monday. I'm Nick Beres. We've got a good show on tap for you this morning. We're going to open up the phone lines. Invite you, as always, to join in the conversation if you'd like with our guest, because we're going to touch on a bunch of topics really in the news right now. And I want to get his take on at least two biggies that really we're watching right now. But with no further ado, let's bring our guest to the table, and it's Sheriff Daron Hall here in Davidson County. Nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Nick.
It's always a pleasure. I really do like you. I'm fond of you. I can't say that I like all my guests that come on the show. I mean, I'm not going to come clean and say which ones I dislike, but there are a few. All right? But I like you. For what that counts, I don't know. I mean, you may not like me much. He may not. What, you know, I don't know what Carla thinks of all this, but it's nice to have you on a Monday. It's a good way to start the week off because it's an interesting conversation. Is that all right?
Well, yeah.
He's flattered.
I'm a little
flattered.
stunned.
He's flattered. No, you're not stunned. You knew that.
Well, they tell us not to like the media, you know, sometimes.
I know.
They
Why
teach
that
you
adversarial thing? I mean, I know that you've had your battles, and we all have, you know, over time between, but, I mean, are you adversarial with the media?
I don't think so.
I don't think you've had good and some negative stories over the years, right?
That's right.
It's part of the game, I guess, you know. But, I mean, we're just doing our job, Sheriff.
Well, I like you too, but I just...
Well, yeah, but you did pour ice water on my head. Let's not forget that. You nailed me on the ice water challenge. Well, listen, there's several things I want to throw out there. The number 737-7587. Just a couple. First, we're all, it seems like the whole country right now is watching to see what happens in Ferguson. I don't know. I have my suspicions that perhaps the grand jury reached some type of decision already, maybe Friday of last week. And the idea was all along, once that comes in, their law enforcement wants to get a heads up at least 48 hours. Do you think there might be a decision announced today? Or do you think it's going to, I know they're supposed to be reconvening. I'm just wondering your take. And then from your perspective, I know you're the sheriff, the police chief may be paying attention. What do you think, what will you be watching for? Any concerns?
Yeah, I don't have any direct knowledge of this, but I'll tell you, I'm on the executive board of the National Sheriff Association. We get alerts from various sources of different things going on, and this has been going on for a week or so. You know, I don't believe there is a verdict yet, or at least a
decision on what to do
from the grand jury. I think it would be incredibly difficult in today's world to keep that quiet anyway, and so I do think there is a responsibility to alert law enforcement, given the nature of something like this, you know, if not hours before you're going to release it. I don't think you could do it more than that. I don't think it would last over a day or 24 or 48 hours.
So let's say they convene this morning and they maybe reached their point on Friday and they're just finishing it up today. And let's say around 10 o'clock this morning they come with it. I guess they go to the judge, let them know we've reached our decision. Then at that point, if you're law enforcement, if that was happening here in Nashville, you'd want at least maybe 3 or 4 hours saying, look, an announcement's going to be made this afternoon at 1. And if that's the case, what do you suspect they're going to be doing? I mean, we already know there's a state of emergency. The governor's kind of said we're on alert. What do you think?
Yeah, the good news is in a situation like this is you have a plan. I mean, they have a plan of what to do. And, and let's be honest. I think there's much more concern if the determination is to not indict him. If you indict him, I don't think there's as much of a concern of a reaction. Right. So you're waiting on what is the determination, and I think anybody in the public could watch that. If law enforcement starts acting in that area, let's say in a more aggressive way, after some, let's say at 10 o'clock this morning, over the next couple of hours, you start seeing a response. Clearly, that tells me that it's going to be that he's not going to be indicted. If the person's indicted, I don't believe you're going to find a reaction from law enforcement and all the authorities in a way.
Let me ask you this, though. Do you believe then that when the decision is made that they will alert law enforcement ahead of time as to what that decision is as well, and law enforcement will know it before it's publicly announced?
That'll be, to me, I think that word will be tough to hold in. I mean,
anyway.
if they're going to, and so, and I think law enforcement will respond to make sure, but I think that will quickly settle if the person's not indicted. Is indicted. I think it will calm down what is the bigger concern. And as my 12-year-old son said last night, that doesn't seem reason enough to do the wrong thing. And I think that's what the other side of the country and is looking at, well, I hope the facts are there, and this is a group of citizens. That's how our government's set up, and they're looking at the facts more than you and I know. And we got to trust what they do, and I hope the facts are clear enough and easy enough for them to come to determination. And then I saw the young man's dad talking about that we really on tape that we really need to not violently protest anything. We need to calm this down, and I hope people listen to that. It's pretty ridiculous if you think about it. I'm all for protest. I'm all for speaking out. I think. I'm a huge fan of the process of kind of arguing your position and getting that out and making sure that we try to have change. But it's pretty ridiculous to see some of what happens in these types of demonstrations. I think 90% of these people are doing it for the right reason, and 10% of those people aren't really even invested in what's going on. They just want to kind of cause the chaos. And buildings burning and people, being hurt and all sorts of things, when I actually think there are people who are, are legitimately protesting just to see change, not to see buildings burn.
Right. Well, and I think the whole country's going to watch too. I hope, depending on what comes down, we don't see violence elsewhere. Because I think if there's no indictment, there's going to be violence in Ferguson. It's going to happen.
Right.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think that will. Now, it depends on what they come back with, of course. But I wonder about the rest. I know law enforcement here, probably, Chief Anderson, we're aware of it. I think Nashville has a much better, communication system, and I don't think anything bad will happen here. But let me ask you on one other issue, a separate thing, a horrible situation that happened over the weekend. Law enforcement responding in Cleveland, Ohio, to a case where there was a child with one of those airsoft guns. He had taken the red or yellow tips, I guess they're orange actually, that are supposed to be like this is a gun. He'd taken them off, and one of the officers shot him, and he died. And he had been pulling the gun out and brandishing it about, but it's a 12-year-old. And now I'm wondering, now this may be more of an issue here locally for police department. Now your deputies, when they go to serve warrants, are they carrying weapons?
Yes.
They are. All right. So they can encounter this. And there was just a case that I reported this morning out of DeKalb County where a high school student had brought 2 of these airsoft guns to school. They were in the trunk of the car, but he had been bragging about them, but they were on school grounds. They did have the orange tips on the end, but when I saw that, and that fortunately was diffused without a problem, you just realize when you see what happened in Cleveland, I mean, that's got to be the worst nightmare for an officer coming into that, seeing it, and then maybe having to take a shot at a child with what they think is a gun and it's actually a toy.
Yeah, a couple things to remember. I know the case. I don't know the people involved at all, of course, but I have a 12-year-old son. We have 20 airsoft guns.
Yeah.
Probably he does.
A lot of kids play with those.
I've had conversation after conversation with him about what that means and why the tips are important and why they put that on there. But we have to remember too, the officers don't know the age of the person. I mean, there's a 12-year-old kid playing on my son's basketball team as big as I am.
Okay.
So my point is, it's real easy for us to say, wow, there's a 12-year-old kid carrying a gun. Number one, you don't know that.
Yeah. We
don't know the surroundings and the gun was being, now, that doesn't mean that you should shoot until you understand exactly the threat that's involved. And any time a gun's being pointed at someone and or the officers feel threatened by that, then obviously their policies are clear in what they have to do. They give a command. My understanding was that was given several times. The question is going to come down to, what was he doing with the gun? Was it, but I speak to kids in around town a lot of times. I mean, I tell them I'm scared of snakes. I hate snakes. And
me too.
And I tell everybody that I think every snake is poisonous because I really don't care. I mean, they're just poisonous to me.
I'm the same way. If I see a garter snake,
I don't care that people say, well, that's just I don't care what it is. I'm scared of that snake.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we should teach people about guns. I think they're all loaded. I think they're all legitimate.
Right.
And so what you have to understand is when you're carrying a gun, unfortunately, these toy makers make them look identical, and that's why these orange tips are required. But when you take that tip off of there, then you're putting yourself, your children are putting themselves in a situation that everybody is at risk to do that. I didn't have those guns when I was a kid. Ours were plastic and purple and blue.
Even then, you heard about it. We got to go to the break. But even then, kind of in our days, you had the little silver cap guns and stuff like that. But it's a statement about today, unfortunately. The guns, one, the toys, like the airsoft's your son have, they look real. That's why they have the orange tips. But second of all, the sad fact is, in this day and age, there have been 12, 13, 14-year-olds that actually have had and used real guns.
Right.
It happens. I can't remember that ever happening when we were kids, and of course that it was a different time then. But now, I mean, there is a chance that a 12-year-old has an actual real gun, and we've seen 12-year-olds commit murder.
Right.
And that's why these cops, and I know there's a lot of furor over this right now in Cleveland because they're wondering, was this a justified shoot? And one of these officers and a child gets shot. But
don't forget, we don't know how old he is when you pull up.
Yeah,
I mean, you're dealing with the circumstances. And
I'm sure the parents are, very upset about this. But again, I'm not sure I can blame the cop in this case.
Situation.
Yeah, your
Very
take on
tough.
that as well. Listen, we got to take a break. The number is 737-7587. We can talk about those issues, Ferguson, the issue of toy guns, anything else too. He's the sheriff here in Davidson County. We'll be back with more right after this.